Hello everybody, my name's Jamie, I'm from Essex, and I've been a fashion model since I was 16 years old. I've worked for clients such as Calvin Klein, Dolce & Gabbana, Giorgio Armani, and Tom Ford. And I have a story to tell. A story about the battles of growing up in a world full of media, marketing, and misinformation. And my story contains a younger version of myself striving for success and managing pretty well, reaping the benefits of a well-paid job and living the good life. Funny enough, my career involved me selling the idea of this good life through the ad campaigns that I found myself fronting. But what was going on behind the eyes of the boy in these photos was a dramatically different story. A story that I'd like to share with you all today. The essence of this story is in my search for the answer to the question of how someone that lived this life could be so unhappy. Why was I losing control? What was causing it? Was I being ungrateful? I don't think that was it. So, let's start the story in my parents' living room at 15 years old, in front of a local photographer's camera, getting my first ever modelling shots taken, or what I thought at the time to be a pretty decent effort. Hold it, please. Now look, these were to send to agencies, believe it or not, to try and start a career in modelling. I'm growing up in a world where we're taught that looks are important, and after being told that I was a somewhat handsome lad, I'm going to get rid of that, I decided why not give it a go. What the hell, right? At that age, it seemed like an easy job, and apparently the money was good. So after chasing down agencies in London, things started to fall into place. I got signed by an agency at 16 and started working fairly often, fairly quickly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the work I was doing was void of effort and meaning. That I was being paid for something that I didn't really deserve. I couldn't be proud of my achievements. After all, looking a certain way is no achievement of mine. I never forget my first season in Paris for Fashion Week, running around with my portfolio, trying to be booked for jobs based on my looks. I actually called my parents a couple of times during this week, wanting to quit. Something didn't feel right. There was something that I didn't like about it. But after some wise words from both of them, I felt a little better. So I put my frustrations down to me being a hormonal teenager, coming to loggerheads with that infamous Parisian attitude on a daily basis. But I later came to realise this wasn't the reason for my feelings. I'm sure the Parisians were lovely people. I had what most would consider to be a happy and privileged life. But ultimately, it left me with some moral concerns. Moral concerns not just with the job that I was doing, but with the life that I was living. With the things that I was being told to strive for and the things I was focusing my time on. But at the end of the day, I guess we're all told to strive for success, right? Or our own versions of it. So my career went from strength to strength. I was lucky enough to move to New York at 18. I bought my first apartment in London at 19. Things were on the right track. But whilst all this life improvement was going on, creeping up from the shadows was a darker issue. As the years went on, I became quite depressed. I would rack my brain. Why am I feeling like this? I had everything I was supposed to want. Okay, granted I was doing a job that had aspects of it that I didn't necessarily agree with, but again, a lot of people can relate to being involved in careers they're not entirely happy with. So where was my anxiety coming from? I believe the clues to this are in the use of media. Most modern people's main source of information. You see, with all the Photoshop, lighting, filters, clever slogans and taglines, the long list of marketing tools that the media use when making products or people more attractive, it was obvious we were being sold a fixed idea of beauty and success. An idea that's not realistic. and that detracts from real values. The mainstream media can be seen to push ideas such as self-improvement is weight loss, or success is money and materialism. The main culprits used to only be the mainstream media. Newspapers, magazines, television are things we're all exposed to almost every moment of our lives. I believe this was then and is now a problem with society and are things we're born to accept in this modern world. But after having been a pawn used to peddle these ideas and having a somewhat inside look into the tricks of the trade, clever marketing, should we call it, I figured I had something to say about it. So, let's look at clever marketing in terms of social media. 9 times out of 10, I noticed that the people with the biggest following were these people taking pictures from attractive angles with attractive lighting, or flying around the world, taking selfies, trying to look attractive, or living high-flying, materialistic lives deemed attractive. I took a step back and realised it's made the marketing tools that we were once fooled by, when in the hands of the mainstream media, accessible to the general public. And we are now advertising ourselves to each other just as shamelessly and dishonestly as they used to when pushing products to us. But now we are the product. I'm sure you've all got that one friend on a night out when you go out and they're dead set on getting that perfect social media snap. Usually trying to make it look like you're having a much better night than you're actually having, and it's probably to do with their incessant picture taking, but I digress. The result is that at the click of a button we see the altered and enhanced lives of billions of people. Billions of people against which to judge our own successes. Whilst this was all happening, I'm starting to realise where we're going wrong. Up until now I missed the point. I believed my own bullshit and the lie that I myself was selling. I believed the person in these pictures was me, and I was happy with that being the image that people would first see. Their first impression of me fit all the modern day requirements, but it wasn't me. And the most fascinating part of all of this is the proof of how transfixed we are on this idea of this life and this image. It can be seen if we look back to when social media came about. This was a great platform to be used for social interaction, to represent ourselves to others, to make friends, but almost from the get-go, that's not what it was used for. We became obsessed with the perfect picture, the perfect moment to better represent a version of ourselves that we were happier with other people seeing. I was guilty of it, and I still feel the effects of trying to move away from that mind frame. But I believe it has to be done. If not for us, then for the next generation. I have nieces and nephews. They're of the ages where their years of social development and interaction, their crucial years, are dominated by social media, all forms of media. And kids are picking up devices younger and younger. Now I understand for our generation, any kind of reform will be a tough sell, or maybe a tough sell. But we have to be concerned with the next generation and how they may be affected. And this brings me back to France. This year, there was a new law implemented stating that any publication of an image that's been altered or airbrushed, a commercial image, without labelling that it has been retouched, is punishable by a huge fine, or 30% of the cost of the advertisement, if I remember correctly. I believe this is a step in the right direction. Because let's face it, the issue is the lies. Again, I was guilty of it. But I feel like we have a responsibility to those younger people who may take things a little bit more literally to label the packaging. If we are going to falsify images, we must be prepared to announce it. Getting used to the real versions of ourselves is an important step to acceptance. Something that there's not a lot of in this new digital world. Now I have to bring this up, as I hear this criticism a lot when I share these views. It's easy for me to say, right? Well, let's just look at that for a second. Someone's image, their aesthetic, their framework is just that. It's the idea we draw and make a first impression, but based on what? You know nothing about that person, their personality, their abilities, or what they stand for. It's a focus on the superficial. It's the same sort of effect as if I showed you a picture of a person in a suit next to a picture of a person in dirty clothes. It's the idea that we draw from the image based on what we're taught their clothing represents. It is a focus on the superficial and it deserves no praise. Substance, character, kindness, integrity, these things do deserve praise. Don't be tricked by the modern media as it's just an idea. Now, I understand what you've heard so far is quite a negative outlook on the things that I've discussed. I had to go through this negativity to come to my most important realisation. So let's try and take an optimistic upturn. I was starting to realise how somebody who had everything you're supposed to want could feel so unhappy. And it was confirmed to me by my new friend, Dr. Nick Knight. He's a talented writer and a doctor with plenty of experience with people suffering from mental health issues. Now, meeting Nick in a restaurant in London for the first time was also the first time I had ever spoken to anybody, especially a professional, about my personal issues and my thoughts. And during this interview, after hearing my story, Nick introduced me to something called Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. And here it is. See, on seeing this, things started to make sense to me. I sort of blurted out, this is the problem. The world we live in is so focused on jumping to the top of this thing, when the happiness is found more so at the middle or at the bottom. And Nick smiled. We live in a world where this has been flipped on its head. Not flipped on its head like a spinning top, the triangle stays the same, but the focus of needs is reversed from top to bottom. When you live in an environment where the things that are classed as your physiological needs are in abundance, that need is no longer a priority. We live in a world where our main priority is the top of the triangle. Bypassing our physiological needs, and also in my eyes due to social media, the need for intimate relationships, friends and family. I feel like we've replaced these with virtual validation and it is hardly a worthy alternative. Not consciously, might I add. We're turning away from togetherness and pushing individualism. We're forgetting our altruistic nature by being too pressured on focusing on careers, success and image. And when you get there, you may not be happy. The really dangerous part is this race to the top combined with our new ability to be able to portray any version of ourselves that we like has not only made us obsessed with getting to the finish line, it's also allowed us just to merely portray it. The result is us being unhappy with our reality and not enjoying the ride. It's an obsession. And let's face it, success is relative. It's not about what you've got or who people think you are. It's about being honest with yourself and happy about where you're going. So who is familiar with Love Island? A couple of it. I got a call with 2 days' notice asking me to join this show. It was a Saturday evening, I got the call, and on a Monday evening I walked into the villa, rather reluctantly, might I add. I didn't think I was in the right mind frame to be going on a show like this. I didn't think it was right for me, but everybody around me was insisting that it would be good for me. And I must say, entering that villa and getting rid of my phone and all contact from the outside world really did help me reset. It helped me leave behind the negativity that I saw in day-to-day life and get my head back. All we had to do in that villa was wake up and interact with each other, build relationships, support each other, and listen to Chris and Ken rap all day. We didn't want for our physiological requirements, but we also couldn't skip that first and most important psychological requirement of togetherness and friendship. We couldn't skip it because we weren't subjected to the distractions of the outside world, the constant striving for careers, success, image, these goals that are somewhat inherited that I believe consume and control a lot of us, if not all of us. So where do I go from here? I've amassed around 820,000 followers since I've been on that show and since I've come out. I've been bombarded with offers for social media advertising deals and sponsored posts, all of which I've turned down for very good reason. The biggest lesson I've learned about my own needs is that I do not need to do anything just because it is expected of me. I've noticed what I believe to be fundamental issues with the world we live in and found fault in some of the lessons that we're allowing to be passed down to the next generation. And I will try my best not to cheat them, or I definitely won't cheat them with advertising companies or ideas that I don't agree with. I will try my best to stay true to myself, spread a positive message, and help those in need. Not focusing on the superficial. And if I have to turn down thousands of pounds of ad deals, dead-handed ad deals to do so, I will. But finally, I understand from being an uncle the extent of tablet and phone usage from children today, by children. And I also understand, being a busy adult, it can sometimes be hard not to allow your kids to be distracted by these devices when you've got a lot to do, because let's face it, they're really useful for that. All I ask is that I hope we see a lot of the different issues that have been raised about this newfound digital world and remind ourselves that overexposure to these devices can be dangerous. They are highly addictive. And the more time children have on these developing in their online lives, the less chance they have to socially develop outside of them, further exacerbating the distortion of their reality. So, let's take back control of our media. Let's set alternate goals for our online alter egos. And let's delete our insecurities. And try and teach the next generation to love the true versions of themselves. Thank you.